No fancy intros for this week's episode, JC. Mate, so many things have happened over the last 7 days. We do not have any time to stuff around. Mate, it's all about TCB today, Johnny, taking care of business. Mate, but before we dig in, mate, before we get started, what's going on with you, mate? How's your week been?
Yeah, g'day, Noz, and hello, listeners. I need to start with the Socceroos.
Mm.
Great effort qualifying for the knockout stage of the World Cup, but I can't wait for next Saturday or this Saturday early morning, watching them in action versus Egypt. So let's go to the Socceroos. All right, back to the NRL. Yep, no problems, no fancy intros from me. I'll leave that for later in the show. So. Yeah, over to you, Captain Noz. Mate, need you to take up the first hit up. Over to you.
Well, mate, with my first hit up, I'm hoping I don't do a Leota and drop the ball off the first run because, mate, we're jam-packed with action today. We can't lose momentum. Speed round. Now, we are not going to spend 3 minutes talking about speed round before we actually get to speed round. Mate, it eats up time, probably doesn't set the best precedent either. What caught our eye? Now, mate, I mentioned that it's a bumper show today. Lots of interesting things happening around the NRL. You're going to be chatting about a player who has rediscovered his mojo, but I'm going to be discussing a development which is incredibly important for the game. The grapple. It's a little bit scary to contemplate, but we're just over halfway through the competition. Mate, the season finally has a little bit of shape. We're going to be looking at our respective biggest storylines to date. Now, the round preview. You notice that week after week, I have a little bit of an involuntary sigh when we talk about the round preview. Mate, I'm going to throw this one to another good mate of ours, Pete Daly, who will certainly get the providence of what I'm just about to say. In terms of tipping, mate, I open my mouth and some idiot speaks. Mate, week after week, that idiot is me. Mate, last week, my tipping was ghastly. Absolutely dreadful. Mate, how did you go?
Yeah, not good. Mate, I'm chasing the leaders, so I'm trying to tip upsets every week,
Oh,
and yeah, they're just not coming off. And yeah, I'll talk about your Eels in a second because they were dreadful.
oh, mate, I'm not looking forward to that. Yeah, but chasing upsets, mate, it's never a good position to be in. And free balling. Mate, it is back to me today. And Johnny, mate, there's going to be absolutely no mistaking in today's segment for a wit and wisdom. We're going to be celebrating an auspicious milestone from one of the freest ballers of all time, JC. And I'm calling it now, mate. It will most def veer into ridiculous tangent territory. In fact, it's likely to start right in the geographical heart of that territory and mate, by the end, we're likely to be completely lost. So, mate, you can strap on your backpacks, pull out your maps, your compasses, and come on that journey with us at the end of the program. But speed round, as I said, Johnny, no exposition, no dilly-dallying today. We are right into it.
I feel the need for speed. Ow! I feel the need for speed.
All right, let's start with Eels versus the Rabbitohs. Look, I'm not even an Eels supporter, but that was seriously frustrating to watch last week. Mate, the Eels defensively were very, very poor early. Then, look, somehow they sort of fought their way back to lock up the scores. And I was thinking, mate, here come the Eels. But look, their attack just couldn't crack the Rabbitohs line, even though they had so many chances. Second half for your guys, just so many schoolboy errors from the Eels, and basically South took full advantage and pretty much ran away with it in the end. Mitchell Moses, mate, he was super poor, and
Mhm.
I'm going to be honest, on current form and even season form, I really think Moses is very lucky to still be wearing the number 6 jersey for the Blues in that decider.
Mhm.
Cody Walker was outstanding again, mate, pulling the strings for the Rabbitohs, whilst Dallas Duncan's season has been very good. His form's continuing, and I actually think he's been South's best player all year, so he's not far away from a Origin jersey, in my opinion. Titans versus the Bulldogs. That's now 3 wins on the trot for the Dogs after their mid-season losing run, which sort of keeps their finals hopes still alive.
Mm.
Crichton was pretty good at 5'8", to be honest. So it looks like this will probably be his permanent position, I'd say, for the remainder of the season, with Burton staying in the centres. The Titans, look, they really struggled in this one. Obviously, after that upset win over Penrith the week before, just too many, park football errors. And in the end,
Mhm.
they were convincingly beaten. Broncos versus the Roosters. I can't believe I'm saying this, but that was the Broncos' 7th consecutive loss after going down to my boys. It's been a crazy season for last year's grand finalists, with both teams, including Melbourne, going through 7-game losing streaks. I should note Brisbane's still their run is still not over yet, so you
Mhm.
never know where that finishes up. Actually, the Broncos actually started quite strongly in this one, leading at halftime. But look, in the second half, the Roosters led by Sammy Boy and all of his little kicking game tricks, and Teddy was pretty good as well. So look, I was happy for the Roosters. They weren't really at their absolute best, but they did the job and got the 2 points. And I think for the Broncos, mate, their finals hopes are over. Let's
Mhm.
move to Dolphins versus the Warriors. That's now 8 wins on the trot for the Finns. Quite extraordinary. Selwyn Cobbo, mate, this guy is having an absolute incredible month of football. He's been
Mhm.
outstanding for the Finns, as we've seen, but also super impressive for the Maroons in the first 2 games. And on the weekend, he comes up with that match-winning play in the final minutes to steal the win from the Warriors. And then my man, Osako, just calmly slots over the sort of a sideline conversion to take the game away from the Warriors. Just on the Warriors, though, mate, they should be really proud of their performance. This was a great game of football, with the lead changing several times throughout the match. So, on current form, look, I've got both teams pretty much in a lock for the top 4. The only concern for the Finns now is we saw the injury to Izzy Katoa. He's got that wrist
Mhm.
injury. And reading all the reports, he's going to be out for an extended period of time. So that's probably the only sort of downfall for them. But look, they're playing unbelievable football at the moment, the Finns, and well done to them.
Cowboys versus Panthers. Mate, if the Cowboys didn't turn up for this, mate, it is unlikely we could get them to turn up for anything shy of free ice cream. Mate, it was a packed Queensland Country Bank Stadium. They were facing the very real possibility of losing touch with the 8. And to top it off, they were playing in front of Tongan royalty. But, mate, even those things paled beside their biggest motivation, marking the 300th game of the greatest cowboy of them all, Jason Taumalolo. Thankfully, North Queensland answered the call, adding uncharacteristic resolve to their undoubted attacking potency. They're also aided by an uncharacteristic error-ridden performance from a Penrith team that was on the back foot from the point where Moses Leota dropped the ball on the game's first run. That said, again, Penrith Panthers, this game was close until the last 8 minutes when the high-flying Jeremiah Nanai, I think we got a little bit more about him later in the program. He took the ball out of Brian To'o's hands to score his second try and put the game out of Penrith's reach. Well done to the boys. A potentially season-defining 26-12 win over the competition favourites, and a fitting tribute to our man JT, a true legend of the greatest game of all. Sea Eagles versus Storm. The battle for Brookvale? Well, hardly. It was more like the bloodbath of Brookvale, led by a double from a rampaging and blues-bound Hamoli Olakuatu. The Sea Eagles took a commanding 24-0 lead into the half, and they never really had to get out of first gear in the second stanza. Melbourne? Well, at least they got one thing right in last week's round preview. To paraphrase another great Aussie song, their revival was just a trick of the light. Raiders versus Dragons. Well, if our last game had a sexy catchphrase, what do we call this game, Johnny? The confusion in Canberra, the befuddlement in Bruce. Mate, these two teams cobbled together an admittedly entertaining game while also leaving us under absolutely no illusion as to why they are both wedged at the foot of the ladder. In the first 20 minutes, they somehow managed to cross the line 6 times between them for the sum total of 2 tries. The Dragons, Well, they showed yet again that they are the NRL equivalent of Charlie Brown, essentially losing off the back of two long range against the run of play Xavier Savage tries, one of which looked mightily like a knock on. The Raiders, well, they continued their meh ways with a victory that showed more of what they aren't than what they are. Knights versus Tigers. Well, did anyone see this one coming? Yes, this game was played in torrential rain up in Newcastle, but both teams put away their high octane attack for a relatively dour three-try affair. The Tigers certainly look better with Dewey, who is undoubtedly their team's most important player, but they still struggled to find any attacking coherence. As for the Knights, Justin Holbrook would have been happy getting away with the 2 points, but he also looked like a coach who had a few choice things to say to his team in the post-match dressing sheds. This is the second straight game where the Knights have just scraped over the top of a mediocre opposition. With the business end of the season looming, it is high time for them to find some consistency. Okay, on to what caught your eye, Johnny. As mentioned, there were plenty of things going on over the round, mate. So what made you sit up and pay attention?
It actually came from the Cowboys versus Penrith game, and you mentioned him before, Jeremiah Nane. Mate, I call him Superman. We all know what a freak this guy is in the air, but that effort on the weekend was something
Mm.
else. It was just amazing. The perfect leap in the air. He catches the ball, and then he has this unbelievable balance to sort of roll towards the try line without his sort of elbow and his arm touching the ground. Mate, that was, and then obviously the score, that was absolutely unbelievable. And we've got to remember, mate, this guy's a back rower. It actually brought back some memories for me from remember Steve Gearon's try for the Dogs in the 1980 grand final when Greg Brentnell
Mhm.
put up that bomb all those years
Yep.
ago. Yeah, Jeremiah Nanai definitely brought back some memories. And as you mentioned, I just want to congratulate Jason Taumalolo on his 300 games for the Cowboys. I always love one player clubman, and JT is definitely that. And as you said, mate, he celebrated the victory in front of the Tongan Prime Minister
Mhm.
and a member of the royal family. I think I read her name was Princess Angelica. So well done, JT, and yeah, great stuff from Jeremiah. Just hope he doesn't do that in Origin 3. I heard he's been recalled. So keep it for the cows the following week, mate.
Mate, those things up in North Queensland were really fantastic, and it just underscores how important Jason Taumalolo has been, not only to the North Queensland Cowboys, but also to Tonga, mate, also to
Agree.
the entire edifice of international rugby league, mate. He single-handedly turned it around when he decided he was going to declare for Tonga. But, mate, I've got something which is a little bit different to what we normally talk about. It's a bit more big picture. Mate, last Friday night, news filtered out that the NRL are on the verge of securing the most lucrative television rights deal in Australian history. Now, the terms of the deal, I don't think at the point of taping they've actually been released, but as we previously talked about, mate, this is rugby league. Things leak like a broken tap. Mate, they're thought to be a 7-year, $5 billion deal. But just
Wow.
repeat that, Johnny, 7 years and $5 billion. So according to reports, Foxtel is going to be ponying up $520 million annually to keep their Fox League channel going, and Channel 9 is going to be tipping in $150 million each year. Mate, if we include the New Zealand rights, it adds up to a whopping $700 million a year. Mate, we're a far cry away from sausage sizzles at Lidcombe Oval at this point. Now, mate, I do have a few thoughts. I did a bit of research, Johnny, and this establishes the NRL as the premier rugby-based competition in the world. If you look on the World Wide Web, the next most lucrative domestic rugby competition is the French Super 15, which we're always hearing about but never actually seeing. Mate, the rights for that are 1.15 billion Australian dollars over 5 years. So our deal in the NRL is 3 times more lucrative. And, mate, this one, our esteemed leader, Pete V'landys, is going to love this one. He's got one up over the enemies from the south. Mate, it is higher than the 7-year, $4.5 billion AFL deal, which was signed in 2022. Yes, the AFL deal was signed a couple of years ago. We know that sports rights continually go up, but they're pretty much going to run concurrently. So our deal is certainly looking a little bit better than theirs. But, mate, I'm also going to look at this from a larger media landscape perspective, but it really underscores the fact that sports rights are now the absolute gold standard for TV programming. In fact, with the Netflixes, with the YouTube, mate, sports rights may be the only thing of value left in broadcasting. Mate, traditional TV just hemorrhages viewers at an alarming rate. Sports, on the other hand, keeps bringing eyeballs back to screens in ever increasing numbers. And with that, obviously the big dollars actually roll in as well. So, mate, well done to Peter V'landys and the NRL. Mate, it is a deal befitting the greatest game of all. And you can say what you want about our CEO. You can like or you can loathe him. But, mate, he does seem to have the Midas touch. Okay, now, Johnny, we're onto the grapple. After a few weeks of Origin semi-delirium, we're almost back to a normal grapple this week. I've noted in the show notes that you're going to take it back to Origin, but grapple? Okay, mate, the competition is just over halfway. It is the perfect opportunity to do a bit of a look back and to discuss our storyline of the season to this point. So, mate, what have you got for us?
All right, my my storyline of the year so far. I was going to talk about the fall from grace by the Broncos, obviously
Mm,
last year's premiers, but I'll go with the New South Wales Blues. Clearly, mate, this team and this squad has been a talking point the last 3-4 weeks. After two Origin games, we all know that, mate, New South Wales have been pretty much outplayed in probably three of the four halves. As mentioned in previous episodes, mate, we were pretty fortunate to win game one, to be honest. And if KP had have stayed on the field, I honestly think Queensland would have probably had won the series but wrapped it up 2-0. So, look, mate, this New South Wales team for me has pretty much struggled in the main, especially in their attack, and they've been committing some pretty basic errors. But it's really been the Blues attack that has come under a lot of scrutiny by everyone this series, especially with Laurie saying he wanted to play a more attacking style of football. He chose players that he believed could do that, but we just haven't seen it. And my question is it the players? I'm not so sure. Whilst
mm.
Queensland on the opposite side, mate, they've attacked from anywhere on the field. And at times they just look so bloody free to play that sort of natural game of football. And maybe it's because they've got players that pretty much play quite naturally. And I sort of heard Billy Slater on the weekend say he picks a team that plays within the structures, but he allows them to play their natural game where they sit. And maybe Queensland just got a few more of those players. Now, if New South Wales lose the decider next week, mate, this storyline's only going to get tougher. Mate, if they win, I think there'll be some maybe redemption, probably some relief for players like Nathan, Yo, Teddy, Moses, and obviously the rest of the squad. So, look, I'm tipping New South Wales to get the job done, but I'll be honest, based on what we've seen so far in the first two games, mate, this is going to be a tough ask for this team and Laurie's coaching. So, I just think, this whole Blues team and this whole series for them has been quite a big storyline. And, mate, there's been so much discussion about the Blues this whole series. Whilst Queensland, mate, I've hardly heard anything about them in the whole Origin series to date. So, that's my storyline this season so far.
Oh, mate, I just realised that both of our storylines are a little bit downbeat. Maybe we need some of that patented JC optimism. But, mate, listeners, you're going to have to forgive the self-indulgence here. My storyline is the sorry state of my beloved Parramatta Eels. Mate, for the life of me, I have absolutely no idea what is going on with this club at the moment. Mate, you talked about it during speed round. From an on-field perspective, we have been abysmal in season 2026. Made 5 wins from 15 games. All of those wins have been against mediocre to terrible opponents. And more than that, it's actually continuing a run of 3 years where we have been leg roped to the bottom of the table. But, mate, the story gets a little bit worse. We seemingly have no direction off the field either. Mate, as of taping, our biggest signing for next year is Jaden Sewer. Now, mate, we're adding that to the 25 back rowers that we have. And not only that, he's from the worst team in the competition, and he seems to spend most of his time on the sideline injured or suspended. But if anything, JC, mate, that's actually better than our biggest signing for this year, Jack de Bellin. Mate, our current junior crop beyond I mean, don't laugh. Don't laugh. It's like a dagger to my heart. Mate, our current junior crop beyond Sam Tuivasa and Team Brown, mate, that seems pretty lean. And, mate, there were a few glimmers of hope. We saw a few glimmers of hope at the end of 25. But, mate, this year, there hasn't been any player or squad development whatsoever. This is a team which has actually gone backwards. And, mate, the more that I think about this, and I've spent 40 years thinking about this, JC, mate, we are not a club working from nothing. We have one of the biggest brands in the NRL with a massive devoted fan base. Whenever Parramatta start winning, mate, fans come out of the woodwork. We have a great junior nursery. We seemingly seed the rest of the competition with high level players, and we are slap bang in the middle of rugby league heartland, Western Sydney, and we have the best stadium in the NRL to boot. But, mate, despite all of these advantages, we just can't get on the pace, either on or off the field. Now, Johnny, this is not a sombrero swipe at your Chooks. In fact, it is the exact opposite, reflecting the fact that I think the Tricolours are a very well-run organisation. But, mate, when you compare our current squad and the Roosters' current squad, how can you possibly fathom that both of these teams spend exactly the same amount of money in the salary cap? Mate, what in God's name are we actually spending our money on? Now, again, it's not all going to be down at heel, Johnny. I'm going to look at a few solutions. Where do we go from here? Mate, in my humble opinion, we need to take some swings at the fence, mate, particularly when it comes to player signings. I would love to hear that we're in the market for players the caliber of Herbie Farnworth, Stefano Utuikamanu, Cody Nikorima, rather than kicking the tyres on distressed assets like, you'll probably guess this one, Johnny Moses Sully, or picking up discards like Brian Kelly. Mate, more than anything else, this is a club that needs ambition and big thinking. Mate, I think Jason Rolls is a step in the right direction. Mate, I've been impressed with the way that he's carried himself and the way that he started to mould the club. But we need to combine that with good management, savvy recruitment, and dare I say it, some swag. Mate, I absolutely hate this. I want us to become the behemoth that we should be rather than everyone's second team because they feel sorry for us. Now, I know I tend towards the melancholic as opposed to your often irrational Roosters optimism, JC, but mate, I love the Parramatta Eels. Mate, in fact, when you take out the important things in life, my beautiful wife, my wonderful children, my mum, dad, family, friends, mate, I love them about as much as I love anything. But mate, mate, more than not, they actually remind me of Ginger in Casino. Mate, they really don't do anything to reciprocate that love. In fact, mate, last year when we signed de Bellin as our marquee signing, mate, I felt a little bit like Ace Rothstein when he found out that Ginger had given 25K of his money to her ex-pimp/boyfriend. And mate, and then to make things worse, we actually go ahead and do it again this year with Sewer. But, mate, whenever I talk about the Parramatta Eels now, I have Pablo Norbury ringing in my head. I am going to take a leaf from your book here, JC. Come on, Para. Come on. Okay, mate, I'm going to get you to start the round preview here, Johnny, while I gather myself, mate.
Mate, that was that was sensational. Look, don't give up, mate. 40 years is a bloody long time, and it's still ticking. All right, let's start with the Dragons versus the Tigers. Look, this one's a lottery, to be honest. Probably the only thing I'll say here, it's probably a must-win game for the Tigers to keep their sort of finals hopes still alive. I've got to admit, the Dragons, they've improved over the last month or so. They're playing at Cogra, so it probably gives them a little bit of hope, but I just think the Tigers probably need this one a little bit more, and I'm tipping the Tigers just to scrape home, but as I said, I really don't know who's going to win this one, to be honest.
Mate, you're spot on by describing this as a lottery. And interestingly enough, both of these teams seem to be heading in different directions. The Tigers are still within sniffing distance of the semis, while the Dragons, they were pretty much snuffed out in the first 3 or 4 weeks. But I think we need to believe our eyes with both of these teams. Mate, you mentioned the Tigers. They just seem to be lacking. The Dragons, on the other hand, mate, they improve week to week. It is likely to be played at a wet Jubilee. mate, the fans turning up with this one should be given free ice cream or maybe some warm soup. But I'm thinking upset, JC. Mate, I am throwing my lot in with the big red V.
Okay. Let's move to the Broncos versus the Sharks. Mate, this could be 8 losses in a row for the Broncos, and mate, it's every chance of happening, to be honest. I just can't believe how quick the Broncos season has unraveled. If you remember the first, 4 to 6 weeks, remember I'm just talking about these guys will go back to back. Well, how quickly things have changed. Just on the Sharks, look, they weren't great last start versus my Roosters, but obviously they've clearly got a little bit more to play for to keep their sort of maybe final four or at least final eight hopes still alive. I'm a little bit split on this one, but I'll probably go for the Broncos to break their 7-match losing streak because the game is going to be played at Suncorp. So go the Broncos. And yeah, I think poor Madge is feeling the heat at the moment, that's for sure.
Mate, that's a bold tip. We've actually talked about this pretty much through the entire season. Mate, Craig Fitzgibbon's Sharks teams, they traditionally maul bad sides. And mate, this Brisbane team is nothing if not bad. It's also a very interesting phenomenon with the Brisbane Broncos. This happened a few years ago when they won the Wooden Spoon. Because they're on prime time so much, you're often fooled into thinking that they're relevant, but mate, they really aren't. And that's certainly the case this season. Mate, I think the Sharks are going to get them, and I think they're going to get them pretty easily.
Let's move to your boys, the Eels versus the Sea Eagles. Mate, when I think about these two teams, I just think about that great rivalry from the 1980s. But unfortunately, at the moment, mate, the gap between these two teams is daylight. As I said and you mentioned before, mate, the Eels were diabolical last start. I didn't even support the Eels, but I was so frustrated watching them play. Obviously, I tipped them in that upset, but they were really poor. Whilst the Sea Eagles were absolutely outstanding in that demolition against the Storm at Brookie last start. So look, I can only see a Manly win here. They'll obviously be missing a few Origin stars, but I don't expect it to be a massive margin, but they'll definitely get the job done. And yeah, Coach Foz is continuing his winning form at the moment.
Mate, you said it. The Eels were just dreadful against Souths, but it's his second mention in the show. I do have Norbs ringing in my head here. If you can't say anything good, don't say anything. Mate, Manly, on the other hand, mate, I thought they were actually back to their best against the Storm. They played really hard. They played fast. They had that attacking spark and cohesion that they showed in their 7 weeks. But, mate, a couple of dark clouds are looming on the horizon for them. They've lost Luke Brooks to a season-ending injury. Mate, I think that's going to really really affect their attacking cohesion. They're also going to be missing 2 of their biggest weapons in Hamole and Tolu. Mate, I think if anything, that should help keep the Eels within 20. Mate, I can't tip Parra in this one. I think the Sea Eagles.
Let's look at the Knights versus the Dolphins. This would have been a really good contest if obviously all the Origin players were available from both sides. The loss of Izzy Katoa, that's a huge blow for the Dolphins. But look, mate, how good has Cody Nikorima been this season? Mate, this guy, I think he's in career best form, and I'm pretty sure he's on the other side of 30. So well done, Cody. I think, mate, he'll definitely be a glue in the team whilst Izzy is out. And obviously, we know the great form of Herbie Farnworth. In my opinion, he's in the top 5 players in the NRL. So playing at Newcastle probably gives the Knights a little bit of a chance, but I'll tip a bit of an upset here. I'll go for the Knights only because they're playing at home.
Mate, you mentioned a couple of players that sort of give this game a little bit of Origin immunity. There is some international star wattage. So Dylan Brown's playing for the Knights, Nikorima, Farnworth from the Finns. But, mate, there's also more than a grain of truth in what you said about this being a diminished game. This would have been an absolute barnstormer in a non-Origin week, but unfortunately the Origin outs sort of make it a little bit more diminished. Mate, I know I keep saying this. I think Redcliffe are due for a loss. I also think that last week's game against the Warriors, mate, it was such a big game full of physicality, full of emotion. I think it actually took a little bit out of the Redcliffe team. The Knights have been lucky. you could actually probably extend that to saying they've been arsey over the last few weeks, but I think they're going to win this one. The only caveat being they have to turn up. They can't have those long lapses where they lose focus.
Let's move to the game of the round, and mate, it's the Panthers versus the Rabbits. Penrith were really poor last start against the Cowboys, even with all their Origin players in the side. The errors that they made were, mate, it's very un-Penrith-like, dropping balls and a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes, pretty much all over the park. And we saw Ivan Cleary in the presser at the end of the game. He was hugely disappointed. South, on the other hand, mate, they've just been grinding out wins recently without necessarily, I don't think, playing their best football. They haven't had their best team on the park. So they haven't always been pretty in their wins, but look, they're finding ways to get the job done. And if you look at the ladder, mate, they're sniffing not too far out of the top four at the moment. With Cody Walker in the side, playing some pretty good football, mate, I think they'll probably get the job done against the Panthers. And obviously, Penrith will be missing a big chunk of their players due to Origin. So yeah, I think the Rabbitohs will get the job done.
Mate, this is an interesting game. On face value, it seems like we've got two teams, again, in slightly different directions. South seem to have discovered a bit of a rich vein of form. The Panthers, on the other hand, again, they're coming off a couple of losses that have been pretty ordinary. In saying that, though, mate, that Rabbitohs game against Parramatta, you mentioned it in speed round. They made a lot of mistakes. It wasn't a great performance. The left edge was humming. The left edge is always humming. It's like saying the sun's rising. But, mate, in that first half in particular, they made a lot of errors. And again, mate, looking at the season as a whole, Souths have been up and down. Some weeks they look like contenders. Other weeks they look like absolute pretenders. Speaking of mistakes, the Panthers made a heap of them against the Cowboys. The other thing is To'o was exposed under the high ball. Mate, I'm sure every other club in the competition was looking at that, and from now on in, they're just going to be aiming those high kicks Brian's way. But despite their last start loss, mate, I am tipping the Penrith team to make a return to form even without the Origin stars. Okay, we are on to freeballing, Johnny. Now, mate, over the last month, there has been a little bit of conjecture about freeballing versus wit and wisdom. But, Johnny, mate, we have no such qualms today, mate. This is nothing but a freeballing thing.
'Cause I'm free ballin', yeah. Free ballin', ooh, free.
Mate, I don't think it's any secret that I wear my cultural influences on my sleeve, JC. Mate, in programs, I'm rambling about Marcellus Wallace and Ice-T and Kilimanjaro rising like Olympus across the Serengeti. Mate, you like that? I had a little bit of a rhyme there. And, mate, I can often see it in your face. Mate, you're too good a bloke to call out my nonsense, but I can tell that sometimes, maybe most times, you're wondering what in God's name I am talking about. However,
Yep.
I usually do it in the context of something which is vaguely related to the NRL. But today, JC, mate, the link is very, very tenuous, maybe non-existent, meaning that it is also the epitome of... Yep, we are well and truly in ridiculous tangent territory here, JC. Mate, 2 days ago, on Sunday, the 28th of June, we celebrated the 100th birthday of one of my all-time favourite human beings, the great Mel Brooks. Now, listeners, if that name does not ring a bell, firstly, hang your head in shame, then pull out your phone, your iPad, mate, rush off to your local library and do a search because everybody needs to know who Mel Brooks is. Mel was born in Brooklyn in 1926. Now, of course, I have a couple of asides here, JC. Firstly, related to this program, mate, a few weeks ago, I wore a blue hat with a white bee on it. Now, I'd just like to tell our listeners that was not a Bulldogs hat. Yeah, I see you, Brendan. I see you, Huss. It was a Brooklyn Dodgers hat. If you ever see me wearing any Bulldogs gear, grab your nearest Bible, JC, because we have reached end times, mate. The apocalypse is around the corner. And how about Brooklyn in general? Mate, this is the birthplace of Michael Jordan, the notorious B.I.G., and Eddie Murphy, in addition to Mel Brooks. But anyway, back to the topic. It's already a rambling topic, and I'm making it more rambling. But mate, over an 8-decade career, Brooks was responsible for, wait for this, Get Smart, The Producers, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, High Anxiety, History of the World Part 1, and Spaceballs. Mate, it would be an exaggeration to say that Mel is wholly responsible for modern comedy, but not by much. Mate, if it wasn't for Brooks, we wouldn't have the likes of Seinfeld, the Farrelly Brothers movies like Something About Mary and Me, Myself and Irene, and the entire Apatow universe. Now, I mentioned the tenuous link, Johnny. I suppose I have to relate it back to footy somehow. Mate, like me, you probably spend an unhealthy amount of time watching old games on Fox League during the off-season. Mate, occasionally you'll watch a game from the 70s, at least one that doesn't look like it was filmed through the bottom of a beer bottle. And mate, they're oddly compelling. Yeah, they're as messy as all get out. The pacing is sometimes all off, and they're doing things that you would never get away with today. But mate, they also have a rawness, a spirit, and authenticity, which is really refreshing. They can also be brilliant. Right? There's these bone-jarring hits. There's breathtaking tries scored through sweeping backline movements with long looping passes. And of course, the fights, mate, they have fights which just have to be seen to be believed. I'll pop some of these in the show notes, and I'll strongly recommend that people go and have a look at them. But mate, it's exactly the same with Mel Brooks movies. Mate, two of my favorites, I'm going to implore people to go back and watch The Producers, either the movie or the subsequent musical, or Blazing Saddles. Mate, The Producers has a running joke about Hitler. In Blazing Saddles, which was incidentally co-written by another titan of modern comedy in Richard Pryor, there is language and sentiment that would make Eazy-E, let alone J. Cole, blush. But geez, mate, when you watch them in a very similar vein to 70s footy, you have an absolute ball. And mate, you can't help but think that maybe we've just lost a little something in this era of anodyne professionalism. So happy 100th birthday, Mel Brooks. We love you. Okay,
Mate.
there we go.
I had no idea where you were going with that, Noz. I've got to be honest, mate. What was the link with Mel Brooks and the NRL and rugby league and our show? Just
Mate, there's absolutely no link. I just cobbled together something in the end, but mate, I just had to signify the moment. As I said, I love Mel. It was an indelible part of our childhood, mate. We couldn't go without marking the occasion. But we might get this train back on the track, Johnny. Mate, back
over to
to
you,
Vox
mate.
popping. Yeah, back to Vox popping here. Mate, your comment about Teddy being dropped for Origin, mate, it was like a bombshell last week. Had a big response. Everybody was gobsmacked about your uncharacteristic swerve from your beloved Chooks. But mate, Teddy had a very unlikely defender from my South supporting father who wrote this. I note JC's comments about Teddy in today's episode. I have 3 comments. The claim that Teddy is the greatest rooster may draw some comments in a field where the names D. Brown and A. Beatson might appear. That said, in my 70 plus years experience of watching rugby league, there have been 3 great fullbacks, Clive Churchill, Billy Slater, and Teddy. Langlands and Lockyer were not fullbacks. If I had my pick of all NRL players to populate a new team, Teddy would be one of the first picked. Coach Loz will make a serious mistake if he doesn't pick Teddy. There are not many New South Wales players who can turn a game. I count 3, Latrell, Marky Mark and Teddy. Edwards, good player that he is definitely not one of them. And because my dad is a Mitchell, he couldn't leave, he couldn't leave well enough alone. This was his second email. The selectors dropped Churchill after 99 consecutive rep games. You only see that in rugby league. And I'm relying on memory here, Punchy Clifford, remember him, or Brian Carlson. My point, if a truly great player loses something as he ages, you don't compare that player with himself a few years ago, but the rest of the field now. That's what they should be doing with Ted. He's a better player than Edwards and can swing a game. Edwards can't. And stating the obvious, whoever New South Wales pick, the Cane Toads are a better team and will require an X factor to win. And finally, I admire your optimism in putting Coach Loz and game plan in the same sentence. So what are your thoughts about my dear old father's comments, Johnny?
God bless you, Tony Mitchell. Mate, haven't seen you for a while. Probably little A's back in the 80s. All right, my return serve. Look, just on Teddy, and everyone knows my thoughts on Teddy. The reason why I believe he's the greatest rooster ever is purely because he's pretty much been consistently great for probably about 90% of Roosters games that he's played since he made his debut back in 2018. It's pretty rare that Teddy has a, sub 8 out of 10 for the Chooks. Yeah, every now and then he does, but overall, he's pretty much great every game. We might have to ask Mr. David Middleton maybe to pull out the player ratings from every game that maybe Dave Brown and Arthur Beetson played for the Roosters. But I just don't reckon those two guys were consistently great week to week for such a long period of time. And that's the reason why I believe Teddy is the greatest Rooster of all time. And I should add Teddy's won 7 Jack Gibson medals out of the 8 seasons he's been at the Chooks. He's won 2 Dally M's, and I think he's probably finished second a couple of times in the Dally M's as well. So look, greatest Chook. It's Teddy. It's Teddy for me, and I just hope we get to add Teddy's face on that beautiful Roosters art mural on the corner of Carrington Road and Birrell Street, Waverley, alongside Artie, Boyd, Freddie, and Friendy this season. So look, yeah, that's my thoughts on Teddy, and just to finish up on Coach Loz. You know what I reckon? Let the players coach themselves. That's going to be my game plan for the Blues. Maybe Loz needs to take a little bit more of a back seat.
But in terms of your Teddy take, I'll agree with one thing, and that is his face should certainly be on that mural. And mate, just on murals in general, mate, I love a good mural. I was in Chippendale the other week driving past the South Sydney Greg Inglis mural. They look fantastic and certainly add character and colour. Okay, we have come to the end of the program, guys. Thank you so much. As always, it's been an absolute blast, Johnny. Mate, I've had a fantastic time. A couple of things. We have our feedback emails, jc@nrloffside.com, noz@nrloffside.com. Send through your thoughts. Again, it's always great to get feedback and incorporate into the program. I missed this last week as well, Johnny. I hope we didn't sort of lose any subscribers, but also subscribe. If you are listening to this for the first time or watching on YouTube, please click the subscribe button. It'll make sure that we do hit your feed. But over and out, guys. Have a great week. Look forward to seeing you again next week.
Take care, listeners, and go the Socceroos early Saturday morning.